Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Best Kept Secret in Healthcare. Now, the best kept secret we're going to talk about today is how did Big Pharma become Big Pharma? Well, believe it or not, it goes all the way back to the early 1900s. So, in about 1906, Andrew Carnegie sold his steel empire to J.P. Morgan for about $480 million, which today would be the equivalent of over $300 billion. This was in early 1900s, so that was a crap ton of money. Andrew Carnegie sold his company with the idea of now he wanted to give away his fortune. So he was looking for ways where he could actually put that money, right? Well, along comes the Rockefellers. John D. Rockefeller, of course, with the oil empire in America, came up with the idea of doing a report. And so he brought in a guy by the name of Abraham Flexner, who was a John Hopkins guy. And them, along with the Carnegie Foundation, the Rockefellers and the Carnegie Foundation actually paid this guy to go out and do a report on current healthcare. And in it, the Rockefellers had Flexner bend everything to the point of supporting medicine. So this is how it works. So the Rockefellers was a petroleum company, right? And so at the time, they were using petroleums as medicine, right? They were creating lotions and potions and some capsules and stuff like that. So they're looking for more ways to sell their petroleum. So when they hired Flexner to do this report, at the time in the early 1900s, you had things like osteopathy, naturopathy, homeopathy, chiropractic, medicine, even psychology. They were all kind of on even terms. Well, they basically paid Flexner to create a report that called everything that wasn't medicine a pseudoscience, that only medicine had science behind it. And they were going to actually show, they did a couple early studies where, you take an aspirin or something, and it would show that, these were the results of taking the aspirin. And so what happened was, they basically created this name, CAM, they called it, or complementary alternative medicine, complementary and alternative medicine, which means they were not medicine, but they were something else. They called them CAMs, right? Or alternative medicine, right? And so as a result of the report that came out by Flexner, 80% of all schools shut down. And it wasn't just chiropractic, osteopathy, homeopathy schools, but a lot of the medical schools, because they were teaching at the same time these so-called CAM modalities, these non-medical modalities. They were teaching some of the medical schools were teaching homeopathy and naturopathy, and they did a lot on nutrition. And they said they came out and said that anything that was not medicine was basically quackery or pseudoscience. And so they started the Carnegie Foundation and the Rockefellers. As a result of this Flexner report, they started investing their own money and had other people now investing in the true science, which was medicine, pharmacopoeia. And so that's when all of a sudden you had this explosion in medical schools, and the other schools were all shutting down. The only schools that were surviving, not the only schools, 20% survived. Like there was a few chiropractic colleges, a few osteopathic colleges, but osteopathy later actually got to the point where they were so beaten down that they became kind of taken in by medicine and basically turned into medical schools. Osteopathy is now pretty much, they don't even really practice the original art of osteopathy anymore at all. Osteopathy used to be the manipulation of joints. From their philosophy was to improve blood flow. And so now I think most of the osteopathy schools, those are elective courses, not even part of it. It's become more of like basically a medical program. So what that did was it started a lot of money going into these medical schools. And so a lot of people, instead of at the time, if they wanted to become a doctor, Instead of going into naturopathy or osteopathy or chiropractic, they went into now what was publicized as the real science, which was the medical schools. And then they started putting money into medical schools, medical libraries, medical research, and it was all building up the medical profession. And Big Pharma, which is obviously the core behind the medical profession, so that the Rockefellers could sell more petroleum-based drugs. And from that, then the Rockefellers then branched off into creating the pharmaceutical industry and opening basically drug manufacturing. So that, money is where it all goes, and if you think about it, when the Rockefellers were looking at, good investments, if you invested in these these alternative to medical practices, they noticed that people were actually getting well, right? If you went to the chiropractor, the idea was the body would heal itself. Our job isn't to give you a bunch of drugs and mask the problem. Our job is to try to make your body work the way it's designed to work, so it has the potential to function the way it's designed to function, and that is asymptomatic, living life to 100%. Medicine focuses on what causes a man to die. Chiropractic focuses on what causes a man to live. And we want to enhance your ability to live and make you function better, more the way you were designed. So when it comes to an investment, that's not a great investment in wellness care, okay? Because people come to you, they get better, they don't need you anymore. As to where Big Pharma and medicine, you go there and, you take a drug, it doesn't fix anything. It just temporarily masks the problem while your body slowly gets sicker and degenerates to the point to where you might need more invasive, procedure, surgery, something like that. So much better investment from a standpoint of making money in sick care. There's a lot more money in sick care than wellness care. Good example, let's say migraines, for example, right? So when you take medications for a migraine, obviously it doesn't really fix the migraine. It just masks the problem, right? I mean, you don't think migraines come from a Excedrin deficiency, right? It isn't going to fix anything. But from a chiropractic standpoint, migraines are something that's pretty easy to fix, the underlying cause. What happens is the brain says, I need more blood. So the heart will speed up, push blood against gravity, get it to the brain. Well, then there's another mechanism that has to kick in, and that is the blood vessels that allow that blood to travel to the brain have to dilate, meaning they have to open up to allow for the extra blood flow. So those nerves come off the brain stem at the top of the neck and go up into the skull and the head, neck, and they open up control the blood vessel dilation and constriction. So as long as the messages get to the blood vessels unobstructed, the blood vessels do like they're supposed to. They'll dilate to allow for the extra blood. But if there's a misalignment in the upper neck, it can interfere with that process. So as a chiropractor, we find that we remove that interference. Now the blood vessels dilate like they're supposed to. You get proper blood flow and the migraines go away. And ultimately they heal to where you no longer have migraines. Well, from a medical standpoint, if you were to invest in me or my office and say, we're going to send you all the migraine people, well, eventually the migraine people get well and they don't need you anymore. So there's not a lot of money in that. Okay. But if I can have you come to me for the rest of your life and take a pill, which will temporarily give you relief until the next one comes about, then you're going to need another pill from me and another pill from me. Then there's more money in that because now you're a patient for life and you're going to be dependent on me to cover up your migraine symptoms, right? Well, little side note. Okay, a research study came out a few years ago, was published in the Journal of American Medical Association, that found long-term migraine sufferers, which is they consider long-term 10 years or more, 80% of long-term migraine sufferers have a stroke. 8 out of 10. That's not good odds if you have migraines. So that's one example of how taking a medication to cover up the symptom isn't really helping you. At the time, yes, it's giving you some temporary relief, but in the long run, your body's dying, getting slower and slower. If you think about it, what did I just say? When the blood vessels don't completely dilate, you don't get proper blood flow to the brain. So over time, you're slowly starving the brain until that part of the brain eventually dies. That's a stroke. That's the mechanism of a stroke. That's why so many long-term migraine sufferers will have a stroke. That's just one example how taking a medication will mask a problem temporarily while your body slowly gets sicker. So there's a lot more money in disease care, in sick care, in medical care than there is in wellness care, holistic care. So that's changed the whole mechanism, the whole design of healthcare years ago. And it's really comes down to making money. And even today, I'm sure you've seen, it's all over the news. Even, RFK's been all over the news talking about the Big Pharma and the vaccine information starting to come out. Things that we've known I've known for 30 plus years, but a lot of other people know a lot longer than I have, because this has been going on since 1910 was when that Flexner Report came out. And that changed the whole dynamics of healthcare in the United States, which in turn, all that money resonated across the world and led to less holistic wellness care and more sick disease care, because that's where the money's at. And you guys know that. I mean, you've been around long enough to know that, you have to, once you go, you have to keep going. And look at the disease. If you look at the growth of chronic diseases in the world and in the United States, like every chronic disease is getting worse year by year by year. If you look at the charts, every single one of them are going this way. They're going up, every single one of them. Chronic heart disease, diabetes, digestive issues, autism, sleeping problems, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, every single disease. If you chart any disease over the last 100 years, they're all getting worse and worse and worse, right? Because we're not doing anything to fix the core root problem. We're just taking drugs to cover them up. And matter of fact, in the United States, we're one of the worst. We consume, although we make up 4.2% of the world population, and actually RFK Jr. posted this a couple weeks ago. The United States makes up 4.2% of the entire world population, yet the United States consumes 70% of all drugs made in the world. 70% of all drugs is consumed by just 4% of the population. That's crazy. We are one drugged up community, one drugged up country, and we consume 80% of all pain pills. So we're taking a lot of drugs. On top of that, we pay more for healthcare than any other country in the world. Actually, the WHO came out with a report. They showed America pays more than double what the second most expensive country is in the world. Per person, we're paying that out of pocket, more than twice as much as any other country in the world. Now, they also rank the overall value of the healthcare for each individual country, the top 80 countries in the world. And the WHO itself came out and said the United States, out of the top 80 countries in value, bang for your buck, how much you spend versus what you get, the United States ranks 79th out of 80. There's only one country in the world that has worse healthcare system than we do. But you would think with all the big, we got the John Hopkins, the Mayo, the Harvard Med, you would think we should be number one. But yet we're ranked 79th out of 80 in total healthcare, right? In value for bang for our buck. We're spending a lot of money and we're getting a very, very poor result. Maybe it's time we should start investing in wellness care instead of sick care or disease care. We have a sign in my office, invest in your health today or pay for your sickness tomorrow. So remember that when it comes down to trying to figure out what you need to do for you, your family, invest in the wellness side of things instead of the sick side of things, right? Try to stay well or get well first, right? And then focus on what it takes to stay well. And that's what this whole podcast series is about, is trying to open people's eyes to the best kept secrets, the stuff that, you're not going to hear about the Flexner Report in the newspapers, on TV, and the media, and primarily because Big Pharma owns all the freaking advertising. You realize 80% of every advertising dollar spent in the United States is spent by Big Pharma. If you own 80% of any market, you control that market. If any time I could come to you and say, hey, you run this article or I'm going to pull my money out, who can survive on 20% of their income? No one, right? I was supposed to be on TV, national television twice, once for my book and once for a research study we did on multiple sclerosis. Incredible research. Nothing like it's ever been produced anywhere in the world. And it was supposed to be on national television, went all the way to the point of filming it, recording it, ready to go, and boom, last second, they jerked it. The first one of them was, I'm not going to mention the names because I don't want, it's not going to matter. But one of them, finally, the second one, when it got pulled, I finally was like, dude, you got to tell me, why would this happen? And the guy was actually really cool about it. He goes, I got to be honest, man. He goes, my executive producer called me up and he's like, sorry, man, I'm pulling this. You're not going to be able to run this story. And he's like, I put a lot of work into this. We went out to Charlotte. We filmed it. And the guy said, yeah, I know. He said, but have you seen who pays our bills? He's like, what do you mean? He said, he goes, check our, watch our station sometimes, see who pays our bills. It's Big Pharma, it's all pharmaceutical industry. He said, we ever run a story like that? He said, they're going to pull their advertising and then we'd all be looking for work. It is what it is, right? That is the best kept secret in healthcare. One of the best kept is how Big Pharma got so big, because there's so much money in it. And it all started back with the Flexner Report back in 1910. And it changed the whole dynamics of healthcare today. So just remember that. Again, keep an eye out on, just because someone in a long white coat tells you something, this is what you need to do, what you need to take, is that what's going to actually help you get well? Or is it just going to temporarily mask the problem while you get sicker? That's a good question. So hope you got something out of this today's podcast. Please share it and tune in for the next one. We're going to come up with secret after secret after secret, promise you things you've probably never heard before, and we're going to expose the real truth in healthcare today. See you soon.